Being in your 20s means you are in a constant state of tug of war. Your life does not make sense 80% of the time. You are uncertain about a lot of areas in your life. One day you wake up, you know just about everything, and you are content in the spaces that you are in. The next day you wake up and you feel as though you have been thrown in the desert without any water to survive. It is a state or a phase rather of just not knowing, and it is a phase of learning. It is a phase of a lot of joys and a lot of downs. It's a state of exploring, and while I've been doing all of that, I have had so many lessons, and there's been some revelations that have come forth, and I want to share those with you. The first one is that someone is always watching you. Whether you realize it or not, there's a person who's constantly paying attention to you. It can be a person or a group of people that are constantly paying attention to you. They're watching how you speak, how you dress, how you interact in certain settings. They're watching what comes out of your mouth. Now, some are watching with an intention to assist you and provide you with certain opportunities that will be aligned to the type of space that you want to be in, and some are just watching with very malicious intentions, and they just want to see how far you're going to go. They want to see if you're going to succeed, and they're keeping a very close eye on you. Now, that is just the nature of life and growing and being in a social setting. You will get people that want you to succeed and people that don't want you to succeed. And so in all of that, I've learned to be very, very careful about what I say and who I say it to. And I watch very closely who I hang around with and the type of spaces that I find myself in. I'm very, very cautious of what comes out of my mouth, because I know that anything that can be used against me will be used against me. So I'm very, very careful about how I move. Very, very careful. Another thing that I'm learning is that you should not be too fixated on what other people are doing. You should be focused on what you want to develop within yourself, what you want to build for yourself. What another person is doing, it has nothing to do with you. It can be used as motivation or inspiration. However, I strongly advise that you just focus on what you have in front of you. Focus on your path. Work as hard as you can to develop yourself. Work as hard as you can to network and build long-lasting relationships that will sustain you and provide you opportunities currently and also in future. So just work on yourself. Another thing that I'm learning is that nothing that is reflected, or rather almost everything that is reflected on social media, is not true. And you comparing yourself to those people that you see on social media is you robbing yourself of the satisfaction that you could be feeling in the position that you are in, and also celebrating the achievements that you have at this age or at this phase of your life. So just focus on you and not what another person is doing. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. That's a very important lesson that I've learned. Another thing that I'm learning is that kneeling down to your insecurities and almost worshiping your insecurities, it means that your future is also kneeling down to those insecurities. And every single thing that you could have become is also kneeling to those insecurities. If you're glorifying them and you're putting them on a pedestal and you do just about every single thing to nurture those insecurities, your future is also doing that. By you nurturing your insecurities, you mean that you are giving up on some of the things that you could be doing that will propel you and align you in the direction that you desire to go. If you feel as though you are not a good speaker and you constantly use that as a way to not say anything in settings that require you to speak, that is you holding yourself back. Don't nurture those insecurities. Challenge them in every way possible, because your future is depending on it. Another thing that I'm learning is the fact that there's no better time than the present to do what you want to do. If you want to start a business, do it now. Another lesson that I'm learning is that just because you are not good at doing one thing, it doesn't automatically disqualify you from trying out other things. It might happen that you maybe not good in the space that you're currently in. It doesn't mean that you cannot go into another space and try and excel in those spaces. Don't limit yourself based off of the environment that you're currently in. Sometimes you find yourself in an environment that is just not yours, and you're really struggling to thrive in that environment, but it doesn't mean that you cannot thrive in another environment. It doesn't disqualify you from trying out different things. This is a lesson that everyone should learn. Whether you are in your 20s, whether you're in your 30s, whether you are in your 40s, just because you don't have everything figured out, it doesn't mean that you will never figure it out. It doesn't mean that you're dumb. It doesn't mean that you're slow. It doesn't mean that you are incompetent. It doesn't mean that you're not cut out for it. It's just not your time. And you will work towards figuring something out. Being 20 means that you do not know. Being 20 means that you're still figuring yourself out. Being 20 means that you are in a phase where you're supposed to be challenging yourself and challenging the beliefs that you previously had, challenging some of the thoughts that haunt you at night, and challenging your insecurities. You are challenging every single thing in your life in your 20s. And with all of that happening, it's hard for you to say that you've completely figured out yourself and figured out what you're supposed to do, and figuring out who you are at your core. So you're not going to have everything figured out in your 20s. It takes time. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of dedication to oneself and to bettering yourself and to trying to understand yourself. It takes a lot of courage and resilience. And so you're not going to have everything figured out in your 20s. You will not be smooth sailing, not unless you're born into a billionaire family and you have everything handed out on a silver platter. Then that's a different scenario. However, for people who are not in that space, you're not going to have everything figured out. And so stop crucifying yourself for not having it figured out. It's just a phase of life. You will not figure out everything in your 20s. So give yourself enough grace for the fact that you are trying. Another thing that I'm learning is that just because you have the resources, you have the time, you have the space, you have the capacity, it doesn't mean that you have to surrender those things to people and to spaces that are undeserving of it. Just because you can, it doesn't mean that you have to. You're not obligated to do it. If certain places or certain people are not deserving of it, then you are not obligated to surrender those things. And so that is a very valuable lesson that everyone should learn, not just people in their 20s, but across the board. So those are some of the few lessons that I've learned that I wanted to share with you guys.